Hi everyone, welcome back to episode 2 of Maddie's Makings. I cannot believe we are already on the second episode. I feel like just yesterday I sat down to record the first episode. So it is currently February 2nd. Like I said in my last episode, my goal is to post the first Monday of every month, and then hopefully maybe in the summertime when I have more free time to knit, I'll post every other week. But for right now, when my knitting time is pretty limited, once a month is my goal. So I'm just drinking my tea. This is my first tea of the day. I've had 2 coffees. So I'm drinking out of this mug that I got last year for Valentine's Day. It says, "I love you, a latte." And yeah, so that's what I'm having my tea out of. So grab something warm and cozy to drink, and I will get right into the knitting. Okay, so my first finished object I actually don't have to share right now. I did not realize when I sat down to film this, it's actually in the washer. So the first time I wash my socks, I will soak them, like block them, and that's how I wash them for the first time. And then after that, I will put them in the washer, but I won't put them in the dryer just so that they don't shrink. But I find that they're fine in the washer. I'll put a picture up on the screen. So these socks I cast on January 1st and I finished on January 12th. So it took me 12 days to knit this pair of socks, and I have to say I think that's probably the quickest I've ever knit a pair of socks. I think I'm a pretty fast knitter, but I'm also not a monogamous knitter. I knit so many things at the one time. But I think the reason I finished these socks so fast is this year, in the new year, I have been reading in the mornings while I knit, and obviously I can't do anything too complicated, knit anything too complicated while I'm reading. So typically I just work on my socks because it's just plain stockinette. I can go around and around and around. So I think that's why I finished these socks so fast. Yes, so these I knit up in the Regia design line 4-ply by Arne and Carlos in the shade 03765, and I knit them on 9-inch circulars, followed the vanilla socks on 9-inch circulars by the Crazy Sock Lady, and again I'll have that pattern linked down below. 2.25 millimeter 9-inch circulars. So when I was looking for the link in the description box, I actually couldn't find the link for this. It was gifted to me in my knitting advent calendar. It was actually the one that I opened on Christmas Day. You'll know from my last video that my aunt made me a knitting advent calendar, and that was Christmas Day, and she won that as a prize from one of the knit-alongs that the Crazy Sock Lady did. So I actually couldn't find the link to it, but I'm sure if you did some extensive research, you probably would be able to find it. So that was the first pair of socks that I finished. And then the second pair of socks that I finished were actually scrappy socks. And I finished these yesterday, so they're actually still on the blockers. I took pictures of them this morning. I cast these on January 13th and I finished them on February 1st. So still not too bad, especially for scrappy socks. And initially, I was like, okay, I want to do Scrappy Sunday, so I will cast on a pair of scrappy socks to work on Sundays. And then I was like really into it, so I picked it up like every single day of the week. And these were like my go-to socks that I was knitting on when I was reading in the morning. So this is actually the color of the socks that I was just talking about that I finished. This was a pair of Christmas socks that I made. So they were all new colors until I got to here, and then I just repeated. No particular reason, I just thought it would look cool, and I'm really impressed with how they turned out. And then I just used, it's kind of hard to tell, but this white is actually a bit thicker than the other yarns, but I mean, it doesn't really make a difference to me. So I just did a solid white color to make it pop. So I followed the Scrappy Socks by the Crazy Sock Lady, and I actually did this as kind of a challenge. So well, not a challenge, kind of like an experiment. So I wanted to see how different my gauge was when I knit socks on 9-inch circulars versus when I did them on Magic Loop. So I don't know which one is which, but one was knit on Magic Loop and one was knit on 9-inch circulars. And I tried them on, like them both on together. I think there's a little bit of a difference because I think I knit a bit tighter when I do Magic Loop, but overall you really couldn't tell the difference. Like if someone gave me these and I put them on, I wouldn't think they knit them differently. But I thought that was cool. I've never seen anybody do, I'm sure people do that. I've never seen anybody do that because there's really no reason to knit one sock on 9-inch circulars and one on Magic Loop. So that was these, and I knit these on 2.25s for both the 9-inch circulars and Magic Loop. So I really like how these turned out, and I think I'm gonna make another pair in the future. Okay, my next finished object that I have here, I knit Wallen a sweater. I hope this isn't inside out. No, I knit Wallen a sweater. So this is the dog sweater knitting pattern by Handy Little Me, and I knit up the size small. I want to say I knit the size small, so this is what it looks like. I actually really like how this turned out. So it's kind of like this nice sort of waffle stitch pattern. It's knit from the bottom up, and then what I really like is that you just need to seam it down the center. And the yarn I used for this was West Yorkshire Spinners 4-ply in the shade Nutmeg, and it has a good bit of stretch to it and it fits him perfectly. I'll insert a picture of him wearing it here. He absolutely loves it. And I think I want to make him another one, maybe in this pattern or a different pattern, but in a blue color, because I love him in blue. So I cast this one on January 13th and I finished it on January 18th. It didn't take me long at all. And I knit them on, it was either 4.5 or 5mm needles, I'm not sure. I had a long circular needle and I didn't know what size it was because it wasn't engraved on it, and I don't have the packaging. I just have like a bunch of random needles that I've collected over the years, but it was the perfect size for this. And honestly, I didn't even gauge swatch this sweater. One thing you should know about me is I very rarely gauge swatch for anything that I knit. I just don't like it. I kind of just live on the edge and wing it. But yeah, and what I liked about this pattern is that it doesn't have, like a lot of dog sweater patterns, you pick up around the armholes and then you knit and rib to kind of make like a little leg. But I like that this one didn't have that. Yeah, so it was either 4.5 or 5mm needles. I kind of just picked one that I liked the fabric and I thought would get me about the same gauge. The next finished object I have, I know you're thinking, she says she doesn't get a lot of knitting time. I don't get a lot of knitting time, honestly. I just know how to maximize the time I do have knitting. So whenever I'm in the car, I'm knitting. When I get up in the morning and read, I'm knitting. If I have to watch a video for skills lab, I'm knitting, because I find that I really focus and retain information better when I'm knitting. So if I'm watching like any YouTube videos, I'm knitting. I can also read and knit. But this is my Musselburgh. Is it Musselburgh or Musselburgh? I don't know. Tell me in the comments, because I've heard people say it both ways. But this is my Musselburgh hat, and I knit this in, okay, so it was a sock yarn that I knit this in. I believe I showed it in my last video because I had 2 balls of it and I only used 1 ball in this one. It's actually this color that I used in my socks. So this is the Fortissima Socka in the shade 1350. And again, I couldn't find the link for this one. I believe these are like older style yarns, so I don't know if you can get them anymore. But I really like this color. So I followed the pattern. So it's the Musselburgh hat by Ysolda Teague, and I will make sure to link it below. I've made a couple of these hats in the past, and I really like this pattern because essentially you're just knitting a gigantic tube and it's just a gigantic sock. So let me just show you when I put it on. I didn't want to have a brim. I wanted to have kind of like a solid hat, and it's not too bad when I'm looking at it now. This still needs to be blocked, and I'm hoping it'll grow just a little bit because I would like a tiny bit more slouch. But overall, I'm happy with it. But if you wanted to knit it longer, or I guess it kind of even works with this one, you could have a little brim. But I like sort of the beanie look and for it not to be so like fitted straight to my head. But yeah, overall it fit well. I followed the pattern. I can't give away too much because it is a paid for pattern, but it's definitely worth the money. So yeah, this is my Musselburgh hat, and I knit these on, I believe it was 3mm needles. I have 2.5 or 3mm, but I think it was 3mm. I cast, oh, I have hat head now. I cast this on January 2nd, and I finished it on January 23rd. So this was my morning knitting for reading for a couple weeks, in between socks. So I think I might cast on another one. I'm not sure. I've heard a couple people on my Instagram have suggested, it's a pattern similar to this, but it's called, I don't remember what it's called. I'll put the name up on the screen. It's a pattern on Ravelry, so I think I might try that one next. Okay, this next finished object I don't have either because it was a gift for my mom's friend's daughter. She's 5, I think. So I knit her this hat. This is the Raindrops Chunky Knit Hat by Ananita Lolo. Sorry if I butchered that, I'm horrible with names. It's a paid for pattern on Ravelry. It was so fun to make, and I used the Loops and Threads Charisma Tweed in the color Cream. The pom-pom is what I actually got in my advent calendar as well, and I like this pom-pom because you just sew the button on, and then it's like a detachable pom-pom. It's not one where you have to like sew it in, so that's really nice so that you can like wash it. But I made the size, I don't remember if this one had different sizes or if it was all one size, but I believe I made the size medium if it was a size. It is a pattern for an adult hat, but it came out so small because it calls for 9mm needles, and I used 6mm because I didn't have 9mm available. It actually came out really nice, and the fabric that I got from using the 6mm was actually really nice. I also finished 2 dishcloths. So here's 1 and here's 2. I finished 2 dishcloths. So they're both this same color. And again, I have no idea what color this is. I'll put it up on the screen. But this was just from my stash. I'm trying to get through dishcloths, so they're both the same color. And I use the same pattern that I talked about before. So again, I'll link it below. Same pattern I used in my last video. Gotta love good old dishcloths. Whenever you need just some stress-free knitting and you're bored of socks, or you're just in, every now and then I'll get in the mood to knit dishcloths. So I have 2 dishcloths finished. And they're easy finished objects. Make me feel like I've accomplished a lot. And then the last finished object I have, I also don't have here with me, and that's because they were also a gift. I made 2 crochet headbands, and I did not use a pattern for these headbands. I'll put a picture up here. So for the pink one, I started that on January 19th and also completed it on January 19th. I think it took me like maybe an hour and a half to knit each of these. They don't take long at all. So I used a 6mm crochet hook, and I chained 16, and then I just single crocheted for 45 rows. And then I just sewed it together, and I made the rows using, I don't even remember what video it is on YouTube. I will try and find the video and link it below, but if I can't, I'm sorry. Just look up crocheted rows on YouTube. So I just did that to make the rows. And then for the blue one, I started and completed it on January 20th, so the next day. And again, I chained 16, but this time I did 40 rows to make it a little bit smaller because the little girl I made this for, her head, she was a little younger, so her head was a little smaller. And again, I just used the 6mm crochet hook. Yarn, I'm not quite sure because it was from my stash. I'm doing pretty good with using stuff from my stash. So that's like some of the dishcloth wool, even though I still have some of that color left. And I still have some of the pink and blue left, but I'm slowly getting through it. And I find myself wanting to actually like challenge myself and like pick something from my stash and like work with it. So that was a fun project. These are good stash busters. And I believe, no, I have one more finished object. Okay, so my last finished object is something I've never done before, and it's a little bit different from what you've seen on my channel, but I crocheted Valentine's Day garland. So let me see if I can hold this up. I still need to find a way to make the hearts all lay flat the same way. It's kind of hard to show because it's like pretty long garland. But I just crocheted these little hearts. So there's a red one, and then it goes into a pink one, a purple one, and then a white, this way, a white one. Again, all these were from my stash, so I don't even remember what brand they were. I'm assuming they were probably either Red Heart or Bernat, I think. So they were either Red Heart or Bernat, but I would have no idea what color they were. And then I just used a random chunky cream color that I had lying around and tied them on. So again, I didn't have a pattern for this, and I make up a Google Doc with all of my like patterns I use just so that I'm organized and I can actually, you know, relay things to you. I can actually relay things to you when I'm showing them to you. But I completely forgot with this because my mom's friend, the girl I babysit for, asked me to make her a crocheted heart garland. So I just went off and did it, and I didn't even think about putting it in my Google Doc. And I only finished it today, but I made the hearts maybe like last week. And I think I just watched a video on YouTube, and if I can find it, again, I'll link it below, but I don't really remember what one I watched. And then I made a lot more than that. I only used 10 on this one. I made 20, so I have enough to make another one. Or no, I think I used 8 on this one. 8, I think. That was my last finished object. So now we can move on to works in progress. My first finished object, I actually have one sock done. So these are the V for Valentine socks by Ellie Jones. And I just love the detail of the little heart on the side. So I have the first sock finished. This yarn is from Windswept Fibers. It is Wild Partridge Berries on their Best Kind sock base. I'm knitting these on 9-inch circulars, 2.25 millimeter, and I cast these on January 2nd, January 20th, and it's currently February 2nd, and I just started this one this morning, so I have the first heart done, and I just have the next part of the second heart to do, and then they're just plain stockinette. This is a free pattern, so I cast on 64 stitches, and then I knit 20 rounds for the cuff. The pattern calls for 18, but I knit 20 rounds for the cuff, then you knit 5 rounds, and then you start into the heart pattern. And then I modified it so it's meant for like a short sock, but I just knit it so, where did it go? I just knit it so it was the length that I usually do, so I had 60 rounds for the leg. And I did 50 rounds for the foot after the gusset. I used to do 60, and then for some reason, I don't know if I talked about this in my last video, but the last couple pairs of socks I've been making, I've noticed that they're like really big. And I used to cast on 72 stitches and do the large size because I used to find that the medium that I would make was too tight. So I think what's happening is I'm not as tight of a knitter anymore. I'm kind of a loose knitter, which is interesting to see how like your gauge changes over time. But yeah, so the first sock done. I love this color. I'm loving this pattern. It's so simple, but it looks so intricate. And it's just a lace pattern to make the heart. So yeah, that's how far I am on the second one. So my next finished object is actually a pair of fingerless gloves. So if you watched my last video, you'll know my woolly waffle shawl by Stephen West Knits that I am currently making. This Trinity Tulips, not Trinity Tulips, it's Trinity Lupins. I always say tulips. Trinity Lupins by Windswept Fibers. This is what I had left over from the first color, which is a lot. I haven't weighed it, but it didn't use as much as I thought it was going to. So I have extra, which is perfect. So I cast on these fingerless gloves. It looks like a sock right now because I'm working on the thumb gusset. But these are the Warm and Simple by Sandrine Voss. And I wanted to try out these fingerless mitts because you knit it up and then they are fingerless mitts, but you keep knitting the rib like for a really long time so that it'll go over your fingers, and then you can fold it back if you want your fingers exposed. But then if you're like out waiting in the cold and you're like, oh, my fingers are cold, you can roll it up and it'll cover your fingers. And I just thought that was so cool. So I'm working on these. Yeah, I cast these on January 27th. I haven't done a lot of work on them, but I was actually working on them before I started filming this, and I think I'm going to work on them some more tonight. So I love how these colors are working up, and it's interesting because in my shawl that I'll show you in a second, I guess just where the stitch count is so different, like the color works up different. So it's really nice to see how these work out. And I was thinking I would do a pair of shorty socks, but I really wanted to try out these gloves. And I'm knitting these on 2.25 millimeter magic loop that I usually use for my socks. My last work in progress is my shawl, and I've gotten a fair bit done on it. Oh, it might be hard to show because I'm in the middle of a row. I don't know why I did that. But I have gotten through the second color, and I'm just starting to add in the third color now. I should have finished this row before I showed it. But anyway, this is where I was to the last episode I filmed. I think was December 28th I filmed it on. So that's how much I've done since then. It looks like a lot, but it also doesn't look like a lot. But these rows, there's like 350 stitches on them now. And all the other things I finished. So in the grand scheme of things, I think it actually has gotten a lot of progress. I love this little stitch marker. It's like a little latte. Yeah, I love it. So I will move that now the next time I work on it. And then we'll see, hopefully in my next episode, I will have it finished. So the color I just finished is George Street, again from Windswept Fibers. This color is going to get blown out because I always film in the nighttime. But I love this vibrant color. And I think these ones I'll use to make a pair of shorty socks because I'm already adding in the third color, which is Better Days, again from Windswept Fibers. And all these are on their Best Kind sock base. So I'm adding in Better Days, and this is what it looks like. It's rolled up in a ball because I kind of got it tangled up, and then I didn't want to cake it up. I wanted to just start to add it in right away. I'm knitting those on 3.5 millimeter circular needles. Let's chit chat a bit. So, yeah, I'm actually surprised with how much I had to show this episode. I think it sounded like so much because I did those little like quick projects like the crochet headbands, the dishcloth, that like Valentine's crochet garland, the small like little hat. But I'm actually very impressed with myself with how much I got done. I think when I started this, obviously it was like I decided I was going to do it over Christmas, so I had a lot to show in the first episode because I was off for like 3.5 weeks for Christmas break. So obviously I had tons of knitting time, and then I went back to school and I was like, oh my god, I'm not gonna have like anything to show in my next episode. So some episodes I anticipate are going to be shorter. They probably won't all be this long, but I actually had a pretty productive month. I have to say, school is picking up. I had my first midterm yesterday. It went pretty well. I just feel like it's all I've been studying for the last 2 weeks, so I haven't had as much knitting time. But again, like in the mornings when I'm reading, I'm knitting away on socks, and every little bit adds up. When you're in the car knitting, it all adds up. Just pick something simple, and that's how you can make your progress. And I find, especially when I come home from clinical, I'll be like, oh, I want to work on my shawl, and I do because it's so fun. But sometimes you just don't have the brain power, and you just want something simple, and then I just sit and knit socks. So yeah, it's really good to have socks on the go. I think I might cast on another pair because the only socks I'm working on now are my Valentine's socks. So maybe I'll cast on another pair since I finished my scrappy socks. So in my last video, I showed the yarn that I bought to cast on my sweater. I think it was the Avena sweater by Amanda Steingast that I want to make. I'm still itching to cast it on, but the thing is, the only cable I have long enough in my interchangeable circular needles, like that would be the right size for that sweater, is currently on my shawl. And I have so many other whips on the go, so I said, okay, you know what, I'm just going to focus on my shawl, and then once I finish my shawl, then I can cast on my sweater so that I only have one garment on at a time. Because in reality now, like I said, a lot of it is just like sock knitting or something simple like a dishcloth, or like even the fingerless gloves I'm making aren't too complicated because they are just stock knit. And you pretty much knit them like a sock. Musselburgh hats are literally just a gigantic sock. But yeah, so as of right now, I don't have any patterns besides that sweater that I'm itching to cast on. So I'm just working away on everything. My crochet blanket that I was making for my advent calendar, I have all those put in, and then I'm starting to use up my scraps. I didn't bring it down to show today because honestly I haven't worked on it that much. I haven't really been in the mood to work on my crochet blanket, and I feel like that's because it was kind of my morning routine over December, and it was fine because like I would have the whole day to knit and work on other stuff. But now I want to do my knitting in the morning, and then in the evening I just don't really want to sit down and work on it after I've spent my whole day doing schoolwork. I kind of just want to work on my knitting or whatever. So I think I will get back to that soon. Maybe I will try to make that like my Scrappy Sunday project, because technically it is with scrap yarn. But it might be another pair of socks, I don't know. But yeah, just work on what makes you happy. Don't feel like you need to work on something just because you want to get it finished or you want progress to show. I will say I have been slacking a little bit on my knitting Instagram, and I feel really bad about it because I love posting on my knitting Instagram. I love making reels. But like I've said, I have been busy the last 2 weeks just preparing for my midterm. So hopefully I don't have another midterm until the 15th. So yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit more relaxed. I still have like busy work to do and like clinicals and stuff, but I think I will have like the brain power to sit down and make like a reel, because it doesn't take very long, and it's ridiculous that I don't. But yeah, just do what makes you happy. And I think that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. I think this video is actually longer than my last one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe if you want to. I mean, you don't have to, but it really does help me out. I will link my Instagram down below. You can follow me over there. I do post a lot. Hoping to get back into posting some more. Usually I post on my story every day whenever I'm knitting, so give me a follow over there. I'll also link my TikTok. I haven't done a lot on that, but now I'm thinking about it, I probably should. I should probably make some reels on my TikTok too. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.